Hi, everyone. For those that missed class either on Thursday, September 3rd, or Friday, the 4th, here's a rundown of what we did. So I started out with class with our Do Now, of course, and actually our Do Now was in it was in the science notebook. And so it was either slides 7 or 8, depending on which class you're in. So I'll just go ahead and show you the actual page that it was on. I'm going to go into my third period, but it's okay for those that are in my 5th or 7th, or if you're in Mr. Chen's class. So the Do Now, it would be really apparent. It would be the first page in your the notebook for that day. So it's just for you to write a few sentences, 3 to 5, to explain how school and or your personal life might be stressing you out, and explain why. And so please share what you're comfortable sharing, and then also create a list of the ways you take care of yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed. So make a list of 2 or 3 things. So go ahead and pause the video and do that, and then come back when you're done. Okay, so a couple announcements that I gave my class. One of them is that a reminder that there is no school next Monday. So first and third period, you do not have class. Congratulations. I'm so sorry you have to miss out on my class, third period. I know you love seeing my beautiful face. And then just a quick reminder to always check the biology calendar if you missed class. Check out my YouTube channel, which if you're watching this, you have. We went over the norms as well, but it's just basically that to listen from the heart and with respect, no jokes about the harm that COVID has done, and no COVID-19 jokes about specific groups of people. And then the important one for this class, because we did some sensitive discussions, is what's said here stays here. And so we want to respect everyone's privacy. Okay, so an activity we did in class was where I put you guys in breakout rooms of 2, and then you interviewed each other, and you recorded your interviews in slide 8 or 9 of your notebook, depending on which class you're in. So it was this one right here. Now, unfortunately, if you're watching this video, this means you missed class, so you won't be doing the interview. However, I would like it if you could fill out these questions on your own. So it'll be, what is stressing you out currently? What is stressing you out about school? Is there an activity or something you miss doing because you can't right now? Okay, so try to answer these 5 questions. The 6th one is a question for your partner to have made up for you. So if you would like, you can go ahead and skip that question. And then this column, of course, because we did a discussion, I wanted to see if people were okay sharing their answers, but because you're not doing the discussion, don't worry about it. All right. That does not pertain to you. Okay, so this is the breakout room stuff. Do not worry about that. So when we came back together from the breakout rooms, I had students share what were some things that stressed them out. So we did a couple of share outs, but then the thing that we did was we actually went to Padlet, which is this app here. And I had students put at least one stressor that they and their partner talked about. So you can see here, like, I miss being in a classroom environment, keeping organized stresses people out. The air is smoky, and so this person can't go outside. So go ahead and read through these. What I had them do next was I had them click on, or basically like, stressors that they also have in their life. And so it seems like for a lot of people, not being able to go outside is like a huge stressor, right? And then also being stressed out about classwork. That one seems to be really popular too. All right, so that's just like an idea of what we did in class. So we moved on from that activity, and we talked about things that we did to cope with that stress. And we specifically talked about two different things that we do, two types of things we do to cope with that stress. So it's like your instinct to find ways to deal with stress, right? And so I'm going to try to explain two different ways. And the word self-care gets thrown around a lot when we talk about, like, you know, trying to cope with our stress and trying to deal with it. But not everything you do that's like treating yourself is considered self-care. So we're going to do another activity that talks about that. Okay, so for self-care, you may have heard of it before. I asked students in class what they've heard of, and they gave a couple of answers and their ideas. So basically, self-care is taking care of yourself, and it's a concept of where you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself first, right, in order to take care of others and the things you need in your life. So I wanted to introduce self-care as this concept and an idea that actually came from Black women. And it started back in the 1950s, right? It really got traction in the 1970s, where the concept of self-care really took off in North America when the Black Panther Party began promoting it as an essential for all Black citizens. And it was really, self-care was a means of staying resilient while experiencing systemic, interpersonal, and medical racism. And so an example from that time is Audre Lorde. They are a self-prescribed Black lesbian mother warrior poet. And they had a really profound quote that I really love. It says, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." And she was a really, really dope person. Here's a picture of her. And so the concept of self-care really comes, I just want to convey that it comes from Black women back in the 1950s. And we'll talk about how self-care is different than this other concept. All right. So this other concept is self-soothing. Now, self-soothing, by definition, they're activities that provide distraction or comfort in difficult times, all right? So like, again, our gut reaction is to like veer away from stress and trauma, right? To get away from it. So like self-soothing tactics may not stabilize you or create opportunities to move forward. Self-soothing, it's a distraction, but it often doesn't like directly address the issue. And so if you're confronted with that issue, again, the same negative feelings might come up. So some examples of self-soothing are like video games. It could be binging TV shows or going shopping or buying things, okay? So here's like a kind of an infographic of different self-soothing tactics. So I'll give you a chance to look at that. Okay, so then we have self-soothing. We're gonna move over to the other type. Oh, so after the activity, do you feel the same or worse? So those are questions you want to ask yourself. And if you answer yes for either of those two, it's most likely that the activity is considered self-soothing. All right. So now we're actually going to transition over to the other type, which is self-care. So self-care by definition, there are activities that help you find meaning and support your growth and find a sense of peace and calm. All right. So self-care, if possible, addresses the actual issue of stress and the source of it. If it can't address the issue, it at least allows you to move forward when facing the same adversity and the same stress. Okay, and so some forms of self-care might be connecting to your roots and your culture, your family, or your community. This is something you should schedule into your week. So it's not like a reaction. It's not like you get stressed out and you do this thing. It's kind of like you do this thing regularly every single week in order to take care of yourself. So some examples of that might be going to the doctor's when you feel sick, or maybe getting a physical before you feel sick, meditating maybe 10 minutes every morning, 15 minutes every morning, eating well to feel healthier are all forms of self-care. Going to therapy, of course, is a form of self-care. So the same graphic I'm going to throw up again, but this time for self-care. And I'll give you a second to look at it. So some of you might note that you're like, oh, Ms. Tao, like exercise is on this one for self-care, but exercise was also on the self-soothing one. And that is, what a great point. Self-care we'll put a pin in that one, and then we'll revisit in a second. But basically self-care, if you ask yourself these questions, like after the activity, do you feel joy and happiness? If you can answer yes, then it's most likely self-care. Okay, so why do you find activities like exercise in both categories? So activities can be interchangeable, and the reasoning they're self-soothing or self-care really depends on the person. So for example, like cooking for some people can be self-soothing because it's just fun in the moment. For other people, like for me, cooking is self-care because I'm cooking my family's recipes, like my culture's cooking. It brings me back to my roots, which really grounds me. And so for me, it's self-care. But it could be self-soothing for other people, right? It totally depends. So for this activity, I want you to go to, and they did this in the main room kind of quietly with themselves, but I want you to go ahead and go to either slide 9 or 10 of your science notebook. And so you'll see that it will be either slide 9 or 10 and it'll look like this. So basically what you'll do is that you'll drag these boxes, which are all these different activities. So it's like going on a fancy vacation, or maybe it's buying new shoes. Buying new shoes, writing in a journal, praying, going on TikTok or Instagram. All of these different activities, I want you to drag them into either self-soothing or self-care, depending on what they are for you. So if you see an activity, you're like, I don't buy new shoes. I also don't pray. If that's the case, then try to think about like your friends or maybe adults you know in their life and how would they categorize that, right? So, and then try to put it into a box. Okay. So if you want, go ahead and pause the video and then come back when you're done with that. So the last piece for homework, what I want you to do is I would like you to list out, I'd like you to go back to your do now. So slide 7 here, or 8 depending, and also the interview, and kind of try to sort out like what are the stressors in your personal life. And maybe somebody else in class prompted, or I guess that wouldn't happen to you, but maybe like you've went through all the questions and you're like, oh, that is a stressor in my life. So I want you to list 3, and then also list 3 things in your school life that is stressful. All right. Once you've identified your stressors, I want you to then think about things you do that are either self-soothing or self-care. And I want you to list out 3 of them. So maybe you play video games, maybe you watch Umbrella Academy, maybe you journal. All right, so I want you to identify 3 for yourself. And this is due Monday at midnight. So Labor Day by midnight, you should have this turned in. But otherwise, I think that is all I have. So make sure that your science notebooks are completely done when you turn it in Monday night. And that definitely includes the slide 4, which is your COVID claim and evidence. That'll be really, really important as I'll start grading them and putting them in Aries. All right, cool, that's it. Thanks for sticking with me.